For continuous air and water barriers on your next build, choose Zip System Ceiling Solutions. Seal tough jobs in a flash.
Hello, UnBuild podcast. Steve Basic here, and good friends Jake Bruton.
Hello.
Peter Yost.
Hey.
Hey, and we're back. We're back with our love and hate relationships with the control layers. This week, we're talking about airtightness. Love, hate on the airtightness. And we're starting with Peter. Peter says he's got the very best love-hate relationship with airtightness. So I've been literally dying all week to hear this.
Wow. That's a lot of it. That's a pretty heavy burden to carry there, buddy.
That's all right.
Okay, so what do I love most about the air control layer? And it has to be, you're not going to like this, but it's the blower door. I just love blower doors.
That's the audio snippet for the whole podcast. Pete saying, I just love blower doors.
No,
I love me a good blower door.
Before blower doors, we didn't even know what the contribution of air leakage was to the total energy burden of a
So
building.
do you like the blower door, or do you like the science of measurement?
That's a really good question, because I actually like the blower door. I like the gear. I don't care for the fan because it's 38 pounds. But I just think it's so elegant that we have this digital pressure gauge, which, by the way, can measure 1/10 of a Pascal using this tiny little processor. I mean, the whole thing's just so cool. The fact that it has neat equipment and that it delivers on something we were unable. We were not only were unable to evaluate airtightness, we didn't even know how important it was. And it's important both from an energy and a moisture perspective. So that's what I love about the air control layers.
There's somebody I've heard. Do you remember who talked about that comment and something about managing energy and moisture
with equal intensity
or something?
Yeah.
At the beginning I thought, well, this sounds really interesting. I wonder where he's going with this.
For those of you that haven't listened to Pete speak at length, it's his mantra, and
it is.
Yeah.
Also, my mantra is just get the hell away from me.
Are you still talking? I was in the other room. I wasn't even in the room anymore.
Were you talking to me when I left?
Well, the other thing is the person who introduced me to blower doors when I was at the research center in 1993. I mean, it was so foreign, that it was one of the first pieces of equipment that made me completely.
Did you have to crank the fan back then, or was it electric? Just wondering.
Well, so that they have been around for, more than 10 years at that point. But I imagine most people go through this.
Who made the first one? Seriously. Was it Minneapolis blower door?
Among the first. Gary Nelson at Minneapolis blower door.
Commercially available, right?
Yes. And that was developed by.
Developed the air tightness testing system.
Yes. I think there were a lot of early versions, but you're right in terms of the commercially available, sort of mass produced.
Yeah. Certainly the first successful one too.
Yeah. But anyway, there's so many ways it's neat and interesting that I guess my hate could be coupled that, which is how heavy the fan is. I really do not like the fan.
I was actually going to come back to that. I'm not sure if they've released it yet, and I'm not sure if they're publicizing it, but I believe RetroTech has a new fan coming out that's battery powered that actually weighs substantially less.
Yeah, you told me that. That's because when I mentioned to Gary about, doing work with, I think it's when we were looking for a sponsorship. And I said, the first guy who figures out how to do a fan that doesn't weigh 40 pounds, that's going to be pretty popular.
You don't have to have an extension cord.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I have mine coupled with an electron converter that I hook up to a mini solar panel array that I can take with me. Just saying.
Okay, so I took the lead. That's what I love
What's
about
the con?
airtightness.
What's the con?
No,
We'll come back
it's
around
the
to
weight
that.
of
Come back to that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, Jake. Love or hate?
I think the thing that I love the most about the air control layer is the control that it affords the rest of my assembly.
Oh, so you're one of
The health
those
and
control
comfort,
freaks.
health and comfort aspects that come with the idea that I now know what's inside the home and I can do things to regulate what's inside the home rather than it just be, hey, there's air inside the house and I don't know where this air came from and I don't know what temperature, humidity it is, or what pollutants it's carrying with it.
That's really cool. That what you're saying is that its contribution to the performance of building crosses all kinds of aspects of performance. That's pretty cool.
Pete thinks I'm cool.
That's a hell of an endorsement. You should feel good about yourself.
At least he didn't say neato.
You should make a shirt that says "At least Pete thinks." I'm
At
cool."
least Pete thinks I'm
That's
cool.
a cool shirt right there. That's a great UnBuild It podcast shirt. At least Pete thinks I'm cool. Be plastered on your back.
But I think the reason that is my item is because all of this was a very large epiphany for me when I first started to understand the implications of us trying to build tighter houses, of us trying to take more care in what we were doing. I immediately fell in love with the idea that I had been screwing it up and I didn't know.
I think
I had most likely been screwing it up and I didn't know.
The other thing is I distinctly remember on a project where I did all of the insulating and air sealing, and the first time they tried the blower door, I was so angry because you until you've had a blower door test on a building, you think that you've got it tight, but air leakage is so sneaky. I was really pissed off that I'd done such a poor job.
Wow.
And if you have not done a blower door test and you think you've done it airtight, you don't have a clue.
Okay, so wait. You did the insulation, you did the air sealing, and you were pissed about the blower door test. Was this your personal house, too?
Yes, it was my house.
That makes it 10 times worse.
It does make it 10 times worse.
So I'll go back to one of my favorite stories. I believe it was you and I, Steve,
Oh, my,
at
watch my seat.
JLC 4 or 5 years ago, and we stopped into the Zender booth to talk to John. Is that his
John
name?
Rockwell.
And John's not there anymore, right?
John Sega.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
And we were standing there talking, and this guy popped into the booth while we were standing there talking and was like, what do I need this for? I have no idea what this is, what this product is, so I'm going to pop in and ask a general question. And then he said, well, we build really tight houses. Steve and I were not part of the conversation that the guy was having. And Steve was like, what kind of tight? He's like, they're really tight. He's like, what kind of numbers are you getting? He's like, what do you mean? Steve's like, what is your blower door test numbers? The guy was like, we don't test, but they're tight though. And it was the most ridiculous, I'm not, I think the guy actually had no idea what we were talking about.
Yeah, he just didn't let on.
And he just didn't want to say, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I must have been
To a
in
stranger,
a good mood
which
'cause
is-
I let him off the hook right there.
Why wouldn't you just say, I don't know what you're talking about
Yeah.
to a complete stranger and let them educate you? Because you don't have to give me your business card. You can just walk away and you're gone. You're no longer part of my life.
It could be anonymous that you learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Many times I wish I had done that.
Just walked away.
Just walk away and not been part of their life. What a concept.
So, Steve, what
My
do you love?
love. So my love is two-parter. One, it's the excitement of blower door day. I'm very excited.
Blower door day. Blower door
Yay, it's here. I can't wait to see the number. But two is we have to couple the blower door with a smoke test. Because the smoke test lets you see the airtightness in action or lack thereof.
So, when you say smoke test, you're talking about using a theatrical fogger and pressurizing the building.
and then walking around the outside and seeing where it leaks. And because it's never where you think it's going to leak.
Yeah.
And, the quantity in which it leaks can be satisfying or discouraging depending on how much smoke you see.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a highlight of the construction sequence for people that care about performance, because it's it really is like the first time you get to measure something. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's like you're going through all this progress. It gets framed up. You get the air barriers in, windows are in. It's like, okay, we can blow our door test and see what we're doing.
So how often do you do theatrical fogging in a pressure test?
It would be cool to do it on every project, but we very rarely get there.
Yeah.
I mean, in my 30 years, I've maybe done it about 6 or 7 times.
And with passive house requiring both a positive and a negative test, is it more likely if it's a passive house that you would use a fogger?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Goals
it's
might
going to
be
pressurize
higher.
as well as...
yeah, because you have to do both. But, sometimes we'll just do a negative test and then just flip the fan around. But one thing I remember, we did Farley's house down on the vineyard. It was the largest 800 square foot house you've ever did see.
Yeah.
But we did the fog test, and I just remember him saying, like, we had it so you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Mm-hmm. There was so much fog.
Yeah.
But it stayed in there for like 4 hours. Like, he was opening windows and doors, and the house just was not losing the fog.
Yep.
It was actually pretty incredible.
Well, that's because then you have to depressurize and let it push itself back out.
Turn the fan on and vacuum out the house.
So we've done it, I think 5 times. I was counting while you were talking. And unfortunately, we figured out how to build a pretty darn tight house before we learned about theatrical fogging. If your house is below 1 ACH 50, it's pretty difficult to see something.
Well, it's funny you should mention this because I was working on a project where there was a moisture problem related to, turns out, the mechanical systems, but we did a theatrical fog test and most of the assemblies were real deep cellulose. The air leakage was so low on this building.
Like, how deep was it? Like 10 feet down, 12 feet down?
Well, the roof... You're not going to take me there, buddy. The roof assembly was, I think, 18 inches deep with cellulose. Might have been a bit more than that. But anyway, the fog just got lost in all the cellulose. The fog... No, if you think about it, it's a vaporized liquid, and if there's a highly absorbent, really deep assembly that it's going through, it might not ever make its way out of the assembly. We never got any fog coming out of that building.
And so therefore you should do that before you insulate.
So it's an absorber.
Assuming you're not using your insulation as your air barrier.
Yeah, well,
because that's what we've done is we do it prior to insulation.
It's an absorptive cavity storage device. Cellulose.
Of theatrical fog. Yeah.
Never thought of cellulose that way.
But to me, it's interesting that all 3 of us picked love related to the blower door. That's pretty interesting.
You kind of led us down that path, and I kept my blinders on, and I figured I would support you today. So.
There's just so much love going around in this.
Okay, then I want to go first with my hate.
Okay,
I'm
Jake,
ready.
go.
I'll follow you up. Yeah, go ahead.
The freaking arguing that takes place associated with airtightness. The houses need to breathe. Oh, you're going to build a house so that it's not appropriate. What happens if the HVAC system shuts down? Like all these ridiculous, we have a much better built home now and it causes other issues. So therefore those other issues are going to be worth just not doing it. And I think that we had the conversation on the podcast, like, the mentality of builders today, if you apply that to all of history, you have to imagine that there was a guy going, yeah, but why would you put glass in that opening? That lion skin that hangs there is more than fine, and we don't have to worry about it breaking. Like, that there's a ridiculous, like, oh, this is not the way that we do things. So we
really use lion skin for windows?
I don't. That was
okay. Yeah, because I don't see that.
I was thinking a fur. I said lion because I couldn't come up with another animal. The bear skin or the buffalo skin. Sorry, bison skin.
Bison skin would have some thermal quality, so you wouldn't have the translucent effect that you would have.
You're taking this way seriously more than he expected you to. You do realize that, right?
Yeah. He never takes anything serious. Now all of a sudden
I take everything serious. Okay. You guys choose
to
promote me as a non-serious person. I take everything extremely seriously. Life is a very serious journey.
I think.
Are you done?
I think that you're kind of a sensitive guy when you get right down to it.
Thank you. Finally, some acknowledgement.
So
the arguing is aggravating, to say the least.
But I like that. You picked you picked for the positive the relationship between all the benefits with airtightness, and then now for your hate, you picked people that don't realize that they are all connected.
The lack of understanding.
Yeah, that's interesting. So
How come people don't go around just like poking holes in their chest to activate their lungs for free breathing?
I don't know.
I thought everybody did that.
Never thought about it.
So the thing that I hate is also related to the blower door, because there have been an awful lot of projects I've been involved with in terms of building investigations where a blower door test was done, but they stopped after they got the number. And to go through all the trouble of setting up a blower door and simply be satisfied with the quantitative result,
We got
which
a
is
1.5. Pack it up, boys. Let's go get lunch.
which, way just as important, if not more important than how much the whole building leaks, is where does it leak? So, there have been a lot of testing done where they got all set up, they got the number, and they're out the door and they're packing their bags because they don't want to take the time. I remember the first blower door test I did with Coda Ueno at Building Science Corporation was in Houston. And
Wow.
we, another employee there was saying, Coda, we got the number. And Coda said, the number is just the start of understanding air leakage.
Yep.
But we're done. The Building America program only requires us to get the number.
Can I change my love? Because you just brought up Coda. So for those of you that don't know Coda, Coda is the closest thing I know to a computer that walks in human form.
And this is because you like him or don't like him?
I love Coda like a brother.
Okay.
Coda's a very great guy, held in extremely high esteem. Probably the smartest person I've ever met.
And apparently Steve owes him money.
And I owe a lot of money. And no. But I'm going to change my love
for running
to
over his dog.
I'm going to say change my love to doing a blower door with Coda, because if you've ever seen Coda suit up for a blower door test, you'd think you were on a SWAT team. He's got like notepads that get Velcro to his thigh that he can write and jot down notes and flash. Like he's got the Batman utility belt going on, and he's got Velcro holsters and straps everywhere.
And he had a plastic toolbox for like a mechanic's toolbox, and he had built all of the pieces of the blower door stuff into this box. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
Speaking of people, you know who Neil Moyer is.
Sure.
Right? I don't know if you've ever met him. Mm-mm. So Neil Moyer, I call him the godfather of blower doors, because he was the very first guy I ever did a blower door with, and it was probably like 1996. And it was funny because at Building Science, we used to go out and do a lot of like building testing and trying to accumulate data on houses and such for demonstration projects. But we would always like stop by the supermarket, and I'd be like, what are we doing? He's like, oh, I got to get a couple boxes and stuff. So he would get like a couple cardboard boxes that were like 3 inches tall that you put like canned goods in and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then he would cut a circle and hook it up to the duct blaster and turn it into a flow hood, tape it to a broom handle. And he would hold it up to the register. He'd have a duct blaster on his waist, and he like a guitar strap. Like he had all this like redneck gear to put it on. Well, I'm beating up on Missouri because you always beat up on the military, so I'm coming back at you with this one. But anyways, yeah, Coda and Neil. It was always a.
So your love is blower door testing with true professionals.
Yeah, they were both just. I mean, Neil, just understood the blower door, and like he would turn the thing on. Oh, there's a window open. Go find it, and like he could just tell exactly what's going on in the house, and just being able to. But basically building a flow hood out of a couple of cardboard boxes, duct tape, and a broomstick, and hooking it to a duct blaster.
That is pretty cool.
It's somebody that just really understood what the hell he was doing.
I had somebody the other day email and ask for some guidance on blower door stuff. And I was like, I forget that like you and I have published a lot of stuff about getting really good blower door numbers. But I kind of just use it for that one thing. And I kind of stay in my lane, and I know how to turn it on and enter the correct information and make it do its thing. I don't know any tricks. I don't know how to troubleshoot it. I call Sam when I have problems with our blower door. I call the manufacturer immediately and go, it's not doing this, it's not doing that. And he'll go, how long has it been unplugged for? The battery's probably dead. Like, it's that level of, I really don't so I need time with somebody to just sit and play with the blower door more often so that I can gain more knowledge out of it. Because, as you were saying, the blower door day, it's always, okay, it's pressurized. Let's find the holes now and fix them. Not like, let's understand exactly what's happening with the blower door and why. It's always just like, okay, let's make these leaks go away.
We were in Tutwiler, Mississippi, and
not a made-up place. It sounds made up.
It sounds made up, but it isn't made up. And Neil says, hey, you got to go into the house, find out how much insulation, measure the joists and stuff, because we were documenting this house. And I remember they had like a metal skirt, and I remember pulling it away and going, hell no, because the ground just moved in like 5 different places. And he's like, well, get in there. You got to get in there. And I'm like, I am not going under this house. The ground isn't supposed to move that much.
Yeah.
When you move a metal pan. So, anyways.
So, Steve, I don't think you gave your hate of air.
I didn't give my hate. So, my hate is how simple blower door and airtightness is, but how unbelievably complicated we choose to make it. Right? So we're in a room. If I walk out that door, I'm outside. There's a very clear line of when I was inside and when I was outside. But yet we've all been in buildings where we could stand there and say, am I inside or outside? And we say, I have no freaking idea on what they were thinking. My head and shoulders are outside, but my feet are inside.
It's funny because with the water control layer, it's pretty obvious where inside and out is. But you're right, Steve, with air tightness, the air control layer, man, there's a lot of places in buildings where they're confused. They don't really know where they are.
And Joe made it real simple by showing us all the red line test and saying, listen, you should draw a red line around your building sections. You're either on the inside of that red line or you're on the outside of that red line. But that red line should exist somewhere. And somehow we don't have buildings that have a red line in the building section. That completes itself.
I think the other thing I really like about the air control layer is that it's one of the control layers that, regardless of climate, is still important. And so we can talk about levels of insulation and how much
it never rains here. So what are we worried about that much with the rain screener, And
it's a very low-hanging fruit. Right?
It can be.
It can be.
It can be. It can be a very complicated endeavor, though, too.
Yeah. But when, it's funny. I had a design teacher in college that I remember, it wasn't me, another student had designed something, and then he asked the professor a question. He goes, I don't know, it's your friggin' monster. You designed it. As architects, we got to learn not to design monsters.
Yeah.
Right. And that one really hung on to me. It's like, because it comes true in building science. Like, if we're the designers that we think we are, then maybe we should be designing buildings that solve for the things that we think should be solved for, not friggin' complicating it like we choose to.
So one thing that comes up a lot about air control layers is, if I have to put it in one place, is it best to put the continuous control layer on the outside of the building, on the inside of the building, or in the cavities? And I have my favorite answer, but I'm going to ask you guys.
Is your answer going to be it depends?
No, actually, it's not.
Mine is it depends, only because I feel required to say so.
You know what I thought your answer was going to be? Do you have an answer? Because I'm going to tell you.
I would probably do outside.
Okay. You know what I thought your answer was going to be? I want it in the one place that you can get it most continuous. That's what I thought.
Yeah, so that's why I would say I was going to follow up. I would choose the outside because I can maintain the continuity of a planar relationship on the outside easier than I can. Every time that thing bends, you put yourself up for challenge.
Yep.
Or changes materials.
Or something. I mean, I can go up the outside of a wall with the sheathing and a window or door.
The other reason I like the outside is that it's the only location that deals with wind washing at corners. Corners can get pretty cold. And if you put the air control layer anywhere but on the outside, wind washing has an opportunity to
More of an issue.
erode.
I was just in Canada. I got to show you this picture, but it was board sheathing, spaced probably like 3/4 of an inch. I was inside on a very sunny day. So it looks like a fence, but it's actually like it was the board sheathing of this house. Like the wind just blew through this house they were remodeling. It's just a really cool photo.
And they had building paper on the outside of it, right?
That one they had building paper, but down the street I jumped the fence. Yes, I jumped the fence and onto a construction site.
I'm completely distracted by this image.
It was one of those fences that people put up for dachshunds.
Oh yeah,
you're in trouble
because
now.
your vertical leap is so goddamn high, right? Right? You're like the anti-gravity vertical leap. But they actually had newspaper from 1959.
Yeah.
And Lexi was with me, so she was intrigued just looking at, hey, look at apples for 2 cents and all these things.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it was a different world in 1959. But they had
There's a
newspaper.
much bigger lesson than cheap apples were cheap back then.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyways.
Well, and you also would prefer if you had to choose
so
one location?
I always make the argument for outside because of the simplicity of what it can be.
Yeah.
I don't understand why anybody would think in the cavity is good ever. And I think inboard is much more difficult to execute the second you have 2 floors.
And we're going to do a whole session coming up on existing buildings, but man, getting the air control layer continuous in existing buildings,
Aero barrier.
Well, I was going to say certainly aero barrier will come up, but it's tough. It's really hard. And, a lot of people knee-jerk answer with spray foam. But spray foam, is in the cavity, and there's just all these places
discontinuous.
that you can't get it continuous.
So, fun fact, the first passive house I ever did, we did a blower door test, and then we did a theatrical fogger test. We turned it around. The house leaked in 5 places. And the 5 places it leaked, all 5 of them we relied on closed cell spray foam to be the air barrier, just because of the situation and circumstances.
And it's not the fault of the material. It is airtight. It's just that when you're spraying
it rolls out and sprays, it creates all these little cavities that kind of bubble up, and it's not this real fluid type.
But if you're in a cavity, you by definition can't get where the double top plates are, or it's not the material, it's the application that you can't get continuous.
We still made the blower door number, but that's where we were pushing smoke out that roof. So
Pushing Smoke would be a good rock album.
Pushing Smoke. It's like a Cheech and Chong movie.
Just one real quick thing about theatrical fog.
Dave's
I think
not here, man.
Talk about Cheech and Chong.
Yeah, Dave's not here.
Excited there. He just flew right over it. And Cheech and Chong was your era too.
That's exactly why I was trying to go right over it.
Abbott and Costello is more your era, but that's okay.
Now,
I thought you were going to say Charlie Chaplin or something.
Pete was.
How was it when movies first came
Pete
out?
enjoyed the talkies.
When you said movies, I thought talkies. The first movie I ever saw, by the way, was Swiss Family Robinson.
Really?
Just saying.
I think mine was probably Star Wars. Capitol Theater, Pittsfield, Mass. My sister and brother-in-law took me, and I don't know.
I was 21 years old when I saw Star Wars.
Was that a damaged childhood? 21 years old before you got to a movie theater. I was probably like
No, it wasn't my first movie. It was your first movie.
I was probably like 6 when I saw my first movie.
There was a point in there somewhere, but
I was waiting to see if you were going to circle back around.
I'm not going to circle back around.
Did we get to your hate?
Circle
We
back.
did.
That seems like
I
a
hate
democratic
that
statement. I'm gonna
we
circle
focus
back
on the
around.
number, not
Yep.
the types and locations of leaks.
The knowledge that can be gained after the number.
There you go.
Yeah. You know the other thing about blower doors, we're gonna we're gonna go like con squared, is people like to talk about their blower door numbers like they're some kind of trophy. But the reality is like the difference between say 0.6 and 0.3, it could be operator error, it could be wind blowing, it could be the calibration of the fan, it could be the temperature. It could be a host of variables that all kind of just set you up to have a lesser than favorable day or the most favorable day ever. But the reality, and the people that don't quite understand it seem to think like, oh my God, 0.3 is, wow, that is crazy. But the reality is it's you're going from maybe a quarter's worth of air leakage to a nickel's worth of air leakage. It's pretty insignificant.
When we first started to talk about blower doors, I would have told you that it was impossible to get to 0.6 ACH50. You just can't make a building that tight. And yet, you guys are doing buildings all the time where that's, an amazing number. What I was going to say is if you're going to do theatrical fogging, just make sure you call the fire department first or alert the neighbors because it looks a lot like smoke. And that's actually what you called at the beginning. It made me think, yeah, it looks a lot like smoke and that can be a problem.
Hey, so I'm going to close it out. But before I do, I have a very important myth buster story to tell you. And so we did this one house. It had actually an extremely favorable number. 0.16 was the overall airtightness on the house. But understand that we did the blower door number before we cast the concrete slab in this slab on grade house. So it was just dirt. And then when we cast the slab, it was exactly the same number.
That is interesting.
So the idea that people go through all of this effort to put stego wrap, tape it, do all of these things on a basement level 7 feet below grade because of air tightness. Now, I understand the vapor
radon
part and radon and stuff like that, but the idea that people think, I've had people tell me, oh, you can't rely on the concrete slab or foundation wall to be an air barrier. That's when I tell them, yeah, go pucker up and try and blow air through the foundation wall.
This is my favorite Steve Basic is being a jerk to you statement. Why don't you kiss the concrete wall and blow on it?
He said pucker up, which is even more of a...
But the idea that I was really fascinated because I did expect the blower door number to be a little different when we put the slab in, but it was an absolutely no change.
It is interesting because, 8 feet down, you do get changes expressed in atmospheric pressure. So it's not completely air isolated.
And the other thing we did on this house, we had zip on it. So we had a zip panel on one of the doors. On the door, we didn't have the blower door in. So we took out a spade bit and we started drilling holes to see if the number would change. It didn't change until we drilled like 8
6
holes.
or 7 holes.
Yeah.
Yep.
It took a while. It wasn't as responsive, nearly as responsive as you would have thought.
And if you want to learn that for yourself, you really should put a piece of Advantech in the doorway, tape it to the brick mold or whatever, and do that. It really is worth it. Also, drill from the outside in. If you're depressurizing, because all that crap's going to come right in your face while you're drilling holes.
Yeah.
But ask me how I learned that one.
All right, so you still got the sawdust.
Take us home, Steve.
All righty. So, guess what I'm going to say? Smash that subscribe button on YouTube. And now, hey, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening in. Send us your comments. You can find us on YouTube. Please do smash that subscribe button and leave us some comments. We do Q&As all the time, so if you want to get your questions out there, fire them up. But until next time, it's Pete, Jake, and Steve, and we're signing off.
We're going off the air.
Thanks for listening.
Off the air. I like that.